We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
Welcome back. We have a recurring guest, Dawn Fletcher, Driven Mindset. You've rebranded since the last time you were on here. So originally Mentality WOD. For those of you, it was pretty seamless on social media, right? Just a little change in the name.
Yeah, pretty seamless. Switching everything over from Mentality WOD to Driven Mind. The website in the back end was not as seamless, but once it made the switch, it was pretty easy.
So a couple of big things have happened since we've last spoken. One, a pandemic. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about mindset during this pandemic, because some people have handled it well, like myself, because I don't really like people. And it's been I'll tell you what, between a pandemic and a baby, I have so many excuses now to never see another human being, which I like. But I tell people, I like people inside a gym, on Zoom, and that's it.
It's funny. I see you as such an extrovert.
Many people, I think you know this, with your background, it's rare that people are one or the other, right?
Of course.
And so actually, let me ask you that. How would you define if someone is an introvert or extrovert?
I think the biggest key is how you get energized or how you get restored. And so, of course, most people are somewhere in between. They're not all extroverted or all introverted, but it has a lot to do, I think, with where we spend most of our time. If it's an extroverted type of environment, we find ourselves craving more quiet and solitude and isolation. But if we're in that most of the time, then we find ourselves craving people and interaction. So I think it's interesting for me anyways. I know that I get restored being alone. Yet over the course of the pandemic, I've spent more time behind a screen alone than ever before. And I just find myself craving interaction and people and missing that I missed that a lot. And I think it's just human nature that when you can't have what you want to balance yourself out, you start to crave it even more, right?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I don't know if that's the definition or not, but that's exactly how I've described it in the past, like how you recharge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've heard of, I don't know if you know Chuck Carswell,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll work a seminar together, and it'll be, we'll go out to dinner on a Saturday night, and after dinner, he wants to hang out at the bar or, go to a bar. And I mean, he's not like doing anything crazy. He doesn't want to get drunk. He just wants to, and he truly recharges that way, where I'm like, no, dude, hotel, dessert in bed, and that's it. But I have found I tend to call people more during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I get out and I'll call, whether it's a friend, a family member. So maybe I do miss a little bit of that interaction,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely don't want to, go out and do a party scene at the end of a busy day. That's
of course.
So my point being, we're in the middle of a pandemic. You work on mindset, and there are people struggling during this time. I think we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think we're improving. We're almost on our way out. But have you had to work with people that are struggling, and what are some of the things that you've encouraged them to do during this time?
Absolutely. I have. I mean, working with people who are, whether they're parents and they have their kids at home or their spouses at home, and it's just a new stimulus, it's a new environment for them, and that's challenging, or whether they're on the front lines in the work that they do, and the nurses and the doctors and the hospitals, and people who have had their challenges as teachers, and those people who have been affected in a different way. I think each of us have had unique challenges in the course over the pandemic, and surely I have been working with people for the past year to give them a space. Really, it's about giving them a safe space to allow them to, hey, bring your frustrations and bring your challenges and your struggles, and let's talk about them and get them out. I know it's so healthy to have somebody like outside of the people that you see every day, whether it's your coworkers or your family, to have someone like myself or have a coach where you can just freely talk about the stuff you have going on is really cathartic. So I first and foremost just try to be that to the people that I work with and coach, a safe place for them to talk about what struggles they're facing and how it's tough for them, because again, each of us have just been impacted in such a different way, in such a unique way. And I think it's important that you process that while you're going through it, instead of waiting till afterwards and trying to reflect back on it and be like, you know, kind of fixing the pieces after the fact. It's like just ongoing healthy processing while you're dealing with trauma, really.
Yeah, it is trauma. And I think it's one of those things, maybe because it's a worldwide trauma, people might not feel comfortable, or maybe they feel selfish. Like, who am I to complain? Like, everyone's dealing with it. But just because other people are struggling doesn't mean you can't.
Right. It's, you know, a lot of the stories we tell ourselves and how we keep ourselves stuck is that, oh, it's not that bad, or someone has it worse, or I shouldn't be complaining. And in a lot of ways, again, that undermines our struggle, and it keeps us from in a healthy way expressing that, yeah, I have shit going on and it's hard.
You know, you made me think of something. Recently in our coaches development group, I was talking to them about, you know, the art of coaching. And it's very easy. Like, if somebody wanted, how to become a better coach? Cool. Here's the handbook. CrossFit's already made it. This is what the squat needs to have. These are the points of performance, etc. And what they don't have included in there, at least fully, you know, there's presence and attitude, but what we call the best hour of their day. And we kind of had this discussion on, it's very hard to measure that.
Yes.
Like, it's hard to tell, hey, I just coached Dawn. She's leaving 1 to 10. Yeah, I could tell when you've PR'd. I can tell when I even made your range of motion better, but I can't tell what's going on in your mind. So, you know, as a coach of coaches, as someone that's been around in the CrossFit world for a very long time, what are some of the things you think coaches can do to help their members, you know, the cliche, have the best hour of their day, but like, what are some of those ways that they can do it without realizing it? Or ideally with realizing it, but doing that on purpose?
Yeah, I know a lot of the stuff that you guys provide is so valuable, because that was something that I noticed early on in my CrossFit days through L1, L2, L3, and coaching, and just reading everything in the journals and everything that Greg wrote is almost that missing piece of empathy and interaction with people and understanding how to communicate with your members. And we're not really taught that, so it's up to us as individuals to seek that out in different ways throughout our coaching journey. So obviously trying to get yourself connected to some groups where you can do personal growth or personal development and learn about your people skills, learn about empathy, learn about communication, learn what to look for in people's like body language and their facial expressions. So it's a critical piece that it's almost like a missing link that we haven't really focused on much, or hasn't been available for us that you know, in the way that maybe you and I see that could be effective. But it's up to the individual to really seek that out in their life through personal growth, personal development, through books and through groups and seminars and workshops, and learning about that other aspect of coaching that I think is the most valuable piece.
Yeah, you mentioned empathy. That's kind of the word that kind of been my word for the last year or two. And when people ask me about development, I don't think I've gotten that much better at teaching, seeing, and correcting.
Yeah.
I've gotten better at empathy. And part of it is, you know, I was on Nicole Coyne's podcast for Healthy Steps. And she kind of said, what was your biggest growth? And I was like, well, getting married. Because I was like, okay, I need to be empathetic now. I need to,
Totally.
And there's a difference if you listen to enough Brene Brown.
Yep. I was going to say, start there.
Empathy versus sympathy type of thing. And it's,
yep.
But something, well, first of all, I did forget you're in L3. So kudos to that. That's very impressive. And you reminded me of a recent topic that Fern and I discussed. And if you remember back to your level 1 in the technique and intensity lecture, although I'm sure it's been quite some time since you've been there, there was this concept of safety, efficacy, and efficiency. If you remember, and those that listened to this recent episode, they're in balance. And during the same conversation with my coaches development group, I was thinking, okay, but without fun, those three things don't matter, right? And no different than if I pull away safety, efficacy and efficiency are meaningless because, cool, you're making these amazing results and you're broken, right?
Yep.
And some of that broken can be mental too, which I'd like to touch upon. But where is that? Where does fun fall into that?
Well, I think it matters because your ability to capture attention as a coach matters. So that's why the piece of being entertaining is slightly important. It's not what we would call everything, but being able to capture attention matters, because if you don't have attention, you can't teach basics as far as safety, right? So I think that fun piece and bringing the enjoyment and bringing the excitement and the passion to your class helps, because it helps people keep their attention on you and on what you're saying, and it helps them be engaged. And so that's critical for them learning the basis of safety whenever you're teaching. Beyond that, it's critically important because that's going to be for them a driving factor in their motivation. If you're enjoying something, if you're having fun learning, if you're having fun getting better and growing and going through the challenge that is CrossFit, you're going to be more likely to be motivated to continue to come back. And that's how you're going to go along from safety to efficacy to efficiency, is if you continue to come back. So attention matters and consistency matters. And fun is one of those pieces that helps both of those.
Yeah. And there's that concept that we talk about: educate, inspire, entertain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do two out of those three, you're not going to have a great response, because you can be educating like crazy, and anyone think back to their favorite teachers in the real world, be it, undergrad, postgrad, etc. And most likely they did all three of those. If you have that boring teacher that's educating you, but it's miserable, you probably don't look back with fond memories. So
exactly right.
Certainly having that balance there. With that being said, and going back to the best hour, so two questions. One, how can someone purposely develop empathy? And two, how can we make that measurable as a coach? Not just empathy, but that best hour. That was something we talked about. And one of the guys mentioned like a virtual tip jar. Like, how much would someone tip you, right? Like, if you at a Starbucks, you leave a better tip when it was the cashier smiled, or they gave you an extra pump of hazelnut or whatever's going on. You don't get tipped. Cool idea. Yeah, I like that idea. But that's what I was trying to come up with, because I can see if you saw a fault. I can see if you tried to correct that fault. I can see if that fault worked. But I can't see that person smiled or what's going on in their inside. So let's answer that question first. Okay. I'm putting you on the spot here. I've thought about it for like 48 hours, and I don't know how much you'll come up with instantaneously. But if I said, hey, Dawn, 3 things I can look for to provide feedback on best hour, what would it look like?
I think getting feedback is important, so obviously from your members, some system, some way to be able to collect feedback from your members, even if it was just, again, this is off the top of my head, but it was like a simple 5-star system at the end of the day, whenever they're putting in their scores or the results with whatever app you use or whiteboard you use, being able to put a star. And again, even if it was just coaches who were able to see that information, you could rank it 1, which was, pretty low as far as enjoyment, and 5 was obviously 5-star enjoyment. And so a simple rating system, but a way to collect feedback from the member or members is number 1.
So that's a great idea, because we go to Crumble Cookie. People have heard me talk about this place. I don't go much anymore at all. Roz is going for Easter like tomorrow to grab cookies. It's like these humongous cookies. They're like 800 calories a cookie. It's not an advertisement for Crumble Cookie, but if there's one in your area, go check them out. But when you leave, there's like an iPad and there's a smiley face and a frown.
Of course.
That's an and there's other businesses that have it as well.
Yep.
That's an interesting concept. I like that. And I like the idea of it's not yes, no, it's not binary, right? It's 1 to 5 maybe.
Totally.
I'm going to steal that. Okay, so that's 1.
I think that's simple. I even like the smiley face and like the straight face and a frown. That way they're getting like 3.
Right.
But I think that a 5-star system, and you encourage your coaches, we're looking for 3s and above. And there's nothing that you can do to fully control someone's experience, right? If they're having a tough day, or if they come in there and something's going on and they're already tuned off to the environment and they're not open to suggestions and feedback, there's only so much you can do as a coach. So there's going to be people where it's not the best hour of their day, and that's okay. It's not going to be like a 5-star experience all the time. I think that's something that's important to note.
And then, but first of all, if anyone's listening and the app's probably created. There's probably a ratings app, but Anasan, if you're listening, he's our kind of IT guy. Can you make me that app, please, by tomorrow? But then what you would do then is 2 things. One, maybe the neutral, you'd figure out who, when to address. Somebody gives you that 5. I want to know why you're giving me that 5. No different than somebody that gives you a 1. There's that idea of conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious, all those. And I think sometimes, I might be a great example of people are leaving with 5s, of course, I'm coaching, but why are they leaving with 5s? Is it a joke I made? Is it the high 5 I gave them? Was it good scaling? And I think that's important to find out. So I love it. That's why you're on here, Dawn. You're smarter.
Well, that's an idea. Who knows?
Yeah, you're definitely smarter than Fern and you and I. So you've given us one thing, and that might be all you need. But do you have anything else you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you can obviously look for within your members: smiling, laughing, enjoyment, and getting better. That's what people want at the gym. They want to have a good time and they want to get better. So in order for them to be experiencing fun, there's some things we can look for, obviously, like smiling, laughing, high fives, dancing, encouraging others, making relationships. There's some things that we could look for as far as the enjoyment side of things. And then progress is going to be really enjoyable for most people. So progress is important. And again, we have all the ways to measure that, but it's important that the athlete is able to recognize progress. And sometimes they can't recognize that unless it's a PR, unless it's, something new that they haven't done. But the coach being able to tell the athlete or show the athlete how they're improving or what they see that they're improving. So giving that feedback to each athlete so that they know they're progressing is critical. And again, that's tough to measure because the athlete may internalize that, like, wow, that feels awesome to hear, but you might not see something externally that they're showing you that they're really deeply satisfied. So that's why conversations with members and some type of feedback system is really critical, because you may not always know what people are feeling if they're not very expressive.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I'm thinking there are definitely times I've seen people both ways. Like, that person's having a great time and they're not. And then, it's more manifests itself into like, man, that lady or guy looks like a scowl, looks like she's unhappy. And then I go over, I'm like, you okay? And like, I'm great. And I'm like, oh, you look miserable. So it's good to have those conversations. And something you said is, we often only put our PRs and our progress on standard workouts like Fran and whatnot as progress, not realizing, well, I didn't squat as much, but my form is significantly better. Or
exactly right.
I did something a tiny bit better. You can even have a worse score in a workout, but actually do better.
Absolutely.
So this
Absolutely.
Is a really good time, and I want to hear your input because we are coming out of the Open, right? And for so many people, whether they did the Open, whether they made improvements, whether they didn't make improvements, it's this kind of almost a reboot, right? It's the beginning of the new season for most of us.
Yep.
Now, you work with a lot of people that maybe made it to the next round or will eventually go on to the games, but for 99% of CrossFitters, our season begins again. So what are some pieces of advice you have, especially from the mindset perspective of, okay, you got your score, now what?
I was going to say, the way you frame that, it's a pretty short season. It's either a short season if you look at it that way, or it's a long, never-ending season if you look at it that way. Well, CrossFit.
I guess you assess, like, okay,
right.
If you're trying to peak for the Open, your season just ended, and you probably like, if you watched Matt Frazier, he takes a month off. Like, most of us don't need a month off after doing the Open, but it is a short season. I mean, it's a very short season for most of us, right? It's 3 workouts, it's 3 weeks, if you will. But it's very meaningful to us and it's very valuable. And I mean, at this point in my life, I kind of laugh at people that are doing repeats to move up 10 spots in the 10,000 range. I'm like,
Right.
you realize like
They
this is
care.
competition, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like
No.
at 42, with a baby, with training in my garage, one and done, knowing full well if I did it again, I would undoubtedly do better, but it's not that important. So what are some of the things? Let's talk general population first. Those like me, they're done with the open. Now what can I do mentally for a reboot?
Yeah, I would say that the open is typically part of your season, or maybe it's an opportunity for you to compete over a worldwide scale over the course of 3 weeks. But it may not be the only competitive thing you do all year, depending again on where you are and what your priorities are. But it's an exciting part of your season. And again, that's not necessarily over. It's just now time to, if you want to, and if you are excited about competition, look for what's next, or what is going to continue to motivate me and excite me. So taking a little period of rest and reset. I always say 2 weeks is a good timeline of just like no serious training, have fun, do some workouts you want to do, take some time off, get out of the gym, do some other stuff. It's a good period of reset if you're not going on to the next stage. And then do some reflection on what you want to do with your training. Is it time to make any changes with getting more serious with a program or with a coach? Is there something that you want to improve on even more, and it's time to bring in someone from nutrition or from weightlifting or from mindset? And so being able to say like, where's my motivation at, and what am I trying to do next, or what am I trying to do with this, and kind of forecast and goal set for the next period of time, 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time, and be able to look at what you want to do next.
So do you recommend that as far as, your average person? And I would argue this, anyone that says they don't care but actually does CrossFit cares. Because you
Oh,
can't
of course. And you signed up for the open and you did it. Yep.
and even anyone that just goes to you cannot be miserable because CrossFit is miserable at the end of the day, right? Obviously that's facetious, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
And not care at all.
Right.
So if someone were like me and I'm like, hey, I'm just doing this for fun at this point, health, longevity, grandkids, do I still write out goals for the year for fitness? Or do you just say you just do it every day?
I say, if you're doing this for fun, we create goals around fun. How can we keep this fun for you? Or what does that look like for you to be having the most fun in CrossFit over the next 3 or 6 months? Who did you love training with? When did you love training? What environment did you love training in? What kept it really enjoyable for you over the open or the last 6 months? So fun would be the priority. And we talk about how can you make sure you continue to enjoy it and love it, and maybe even bump up some of those components that really led to you having a good time. And so no, not the goals aren't necessarily around you again getting improvements in any lifts or metcons or conditioning. The goals may be just centered around making sure that your enjoyment stays really high.
Yeah, and I would guess that most people that you have that conversation with, it inevitably comes down to like, and do better. Like, hey, I want to go to the 6 a.m. today with my friends, listen to classic rock, but get worse at CrossFit. No, but I guess the other aspect would be, well, if you're doing these things to keep it fun, accidentally you'll get fitter.
Absolutely. If you're enjoying it, and again, enjoyment's going to lead to consistency, as long as you're in a place where you feel healthy and happy with whatever you're doing from a performance perspective, you're going to continue to get better.
And that's every box has members that aren't motivated by performance, right? But they will tell you, I don't care about that, and we know they do. So what are some ways that coaches, and obviously what you just said is key, but sometimes we don't have that opportunity to have those one-on-one sit downs with every member. They're busy, we're busy. What are some of the things we can do to connect with members that quote unquote don't care but continue to show up? Because I've got them here where I coach down the road. I can name them, I won't because maybe they listen. 5 or 6 people that are relatively fit, but they have 30 extra pounds on them, or struggle to get their first pull up, and they're just there to have fun, and we forget like they're doing more than 99 point something percent of the world.
Of course.
We just want them to do more than what they're doing. How can I connect with them?
I think you set the example and you continue to kind of walk the walk. And for those people, if there comes a time whenever they do want more out of whatever they're doing, hopefully they feel like they have those avenues in order to be able to ask for help and to be able to say, how do I get to the next level? But I think we can't try to convince people that they're in it for performance when they are in it for enjoyment at that time. And maybe just because simply they see reaching performance goals as an extra stressor, and their stress is already high, their time and their energy already feel low, as far as what they're willing to give to that. So for some people, it's not that they maybe don't want it per se, it's that they're just not willing to prioritize it based on what their reserves are, in life, because of what they have going on personally. So I think we just continue to, like, hey, if you're here to have fun, again, we try to help you have fun at the best that we can. If you're here because you want to just maintain health, and that for you looks like 3 days a week, then we try to honor that the best we can, and teach you about health. And then if there comes a time when you say, I really want to get better with my nutrition or my muscle ups or my squats, whatever it is, we're going to be ready right there to help you and give you those resources. So you almost just provide, you let people know that you're available. You let people know that you're a place that they can come to and ask help, and you can continue to walk that walk and lead by example and teach about motivation, and help people understand that wherever they are, whatever they're going after is okay. And whenever they are ready to go after something else, that you're there to provide those resources and that guidance when they're ready.
And it's really just a fancy way of going back to what you said earlier, empathy.
Yeah, 100%.
I think for me, and probably someone, maybe not so much for you, but for those of us that found CrossFit back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
05, 06, 07,
Mm-hmm.
well, the leader was Coach Glassman. And whatever you want to say about Coach Glassman, he did a phenomenal job. He started this thing. We're all doing it because of him.
Yep.
But if you didn't know any better, you'd say there wasn't a whole lot of empathy.
Agreed.
It was, eat meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar,
Agreed.
ending with, learn and play new sports. And that was really it. And for quite some time, it was, if you don't do that, you don't belong here. And I think, if the leader's preaching that, it shouldn't come as a surprise that a 30-year-old at the time, highly influenced by this guy, excited about CrossFit, bought in. Like, this is it. You can't do yoga. You can't, you can't have, you can't hang out with friends that don't do this thing. So there's that, and then we're seeing that shift. But what are some ways that this is the other question I had, what are some ways that people can seek out gaining empathy, improving empathy, learning empathy? Like, for me, without getting married, without, not that you shouldn't get married.
I was going to say relationships is an easy way, right? You either learn or you don't.
That's extreme, though. Don't get married just to be a better person. Love that person. But, do you have any tangible pieces of advice other than, check out, Daring Greatly and Dare to Lead and Brandon Brown's podcast?
I mean, emotional intelligence is a big thing. Emotional intelligence leads to then the next stage of emotional intelligence I would call emotional agility. So emotional intelligence is just learning about emotions, learning about your own personal emotional scope. Like, most humans are comfortable with about 30 different emotions, the basic ones, sad, anxious, mad, that kind of thing. But we experience up to 30,000 different emotions. And so being able to learn about what am I experiencing and identify your own emotions helps you to be able to better understand what maybe other people are experiencing. So I think that starting with ourselves is always a great starting point of just learning about emotions and gaining emotional intelligence. And again, it's not something we're taught in school. It's not something we're taught in college unless we go after a psych degree. And then we end up like floundering in our 30s, like, what the hell is emotional intelligence? And a lot of the athletes that I work with, that's actually like one of our main focus, because they're so intellectual as athletes, but from a physical component, and they have for so long not learned about and understood their own emotional scope. So that's another topic in itself. But basically, starting with yourself with emotional intelligence, which can lead to greater empathy because you have a greater understanding and awareness of your own personal emotions, and then being able to, again, understand what other people are going through and being able to try to improve your communication skills around how other people may be feeling. There's a book I really love, Crucial Conversations, which talks a lot about, how to have conversations when you're uncomfortable. But those are some resources and some places to start. Again, really, it's practice, and it's about getting yourself connected with somebody or a group of people who can help you and who can help coach you and help teach you those skills.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake that schools don't teach that.
I couldn't agree more. That is again, we aim to learn to understand our physical selves, but we do nothing to understand our emotional selves.
Right, like PE or gym class was definitely my favorite class in high school.
Me too.
But you're
sure.
right, it's like, cool, we're working on our physical body, kind of playing badminton.
Right.
But we're not working on like, hey, here's how I even took a home ec class. I learned how to make cheesecake, right? But
Yep.
No one was like, hey, by the way, like you're gonna deal with assholes and you're gonna deal with nice people, and here's how you can work with them. And my parents were in town for the baby, and they were like, we're gonna start a college fund. And I was like, don't, and I'm not sending her to college. And they're like, what? And I'm joking, just kind of like getting my dad riled up. But I joked that it's like college was great. I took psych, I learned a little bit, but it was, I don't use it, but really you do. Like you deal with people. Like college is great for learning how to deal with other humans. You're at a great age to learn that. Now, you mentioned your athletes doing that. What are some ways that you work with them, and why is that important for athletes, even if they're not interacting as a coach?
So this is something that I have put a lot of emphasis on over the past probably 2 or 3 years of my coaching with athletes, because I've been continually shown how important it is, and maybe how undervalued it has been from a coaching perspective. So again, starting with themselves, let's just say you and I had a session. I would ask you to identify 3 to 5 feelings that you experienced today, Jason. And most people at the beginning of that conversation, it's like, what? Happy?
During the workout, you're talking just
generally right. In life, like
so
3 emotions you felt today.
Are you asking?
Yeah, let's just try it.
I felt, gratitude for Roz and the baby. I felt stress earlier when I had to get a couple things done. I thought I'd be late to a call, and then I felt is connection and emotion.
Yep, connected, grateful, and stressed, right? So you identified like 3 things that you were able to say that I felt today. Typically, if an athlete hasn't practiced or isn't aware of their own emotional scope, they may say like, fine, good. And it's like, okay, I'm going to give you 30 different words you can choose from. Take 5 minutes and just try to go through those words and see if you can pick 3. And then once you pick those, tell me what you mean by them. Just like what you just did. You kind of gave me an example to almost back up what the emotional experience was. So we start there. We start just by basic learning and understanding. Oh, okay, actually, I thought I was mad, but I was actually afraid. We start to get a little bit deeper, and I ask, again, about that experience. How did it feel? Where did that stem from? And then they can do that on their own through keeping a journal about just generally about their emotions. But then I also give them reading and resources and podcasts to listen to, so that it's not just coming from me. They're kind of hearing this from different angles, and they're able to learn and appreciate that they have emotions, because we all do. And most people would rather just shove them down and really not talk about them or deal with them. And that's only because it's novel. It's uncomfortable when you haven't done something before. Just like it's uncomfortable doing the kipping pull-up, it's uncomfortable saying you had fear if you haven't practiced that. And I understand that. So we walk through that. And I think that can actually be really empowering for an athlete, because instead of trying to ignore that they have emotions, especially when they're talking about competing at the CrossFit Games, they can identify those emotions, and then they have tools to be able to say, what within what I can do can help me handle this emotion, right? So we now can identify it and actually do something with it that helps them feel very empowered. Hey, I'm feeling really anxious right now. Here's some things that I can do about that. Talk it out with my coach, talk about a plan, do some breathing exercises, go on a walk, whatever. So now they're empowered to not only be able to understand themselves, but to also have tools to be able to use those emotions in a way that can actually help them perform better.
Yeah, I think when you recognize things like you mentioned, like fear and anxiety, and you can kind of get a better understanding of why you're feeling that way, how you can cope with it,
Yep.
because we all get that fear and anxiety. I don't, as much as I said I do the open for fun, 3, 2, prior to the 3, 2, 1 go, I'm stressed.
Of course.
Like we all care a little bit.
Of course.
You mentioned a few podcasts. Do you have some examples of where you might send people?
Yeah, I can send you some too, but of course, like Brene Brown's an easy one. What other ones? Susan Davis does a work on emotional agility, which there's some really good material on. There may be a couple of other ones that I've used in the past that I steer people to again, just have a greater understanding of what are emotions and what do you do with them, how do you identify them, and I try to look at it as how can this be an actual strength for me? How can this be something that I can use to actually make me better? Because when you sell that to an athlete, they're going to be more bought in, obviously.
Yeah, and I know we've kind of mentioned Brene Brown a few times, but she was probably one of the biggest catalysts for me as far as that made. I just remember a period of time where I downloaded all of her audiobooks and listened to them. And for those of you listening now, I think men are like a little like, oh, Brene Brown, it's a woman, and it's empathy, it's too feminine for me. Listen to her because you will learn. And I would probably add it to my must read list for CrossFit for any coaches, but really anyone interacting with humans. I would put that there. It's going to make you a better coach when you're listening to that. Now, you also said something earlier that was interesting about, hey, leading by example.
Mm-hmm.
For you and I, we've been around a long time. Mm-hmm. And there are coaches that get burned out, as do box owners. How can they continue to lead by example when struggling with burnout?
I think the best thing you can do when struggling with burnout, obviously, is to show people how you are working through that. So again, instead of hiding it as a box owner, as a coach, you actually say, hey, this is a good opportunity for a learning lesson for myself and for all of you. I've been working to this degree at this pace for a certain time. There's things going on personally for me, and I'm feeling a little burnout, or any other way you want to describe that. So here are some things that I'm going to integrate. I'm going to come in later. I'm not going to come until 10. I'm going to take Thursdays off, right? I'm going to be out of the gym. Sundays, I'm going to be offline. You will not get an email from me, or you will not see me on social. And if you do, you can ping me and say, hey, remember your boundaries. So you bring people on board for a good teaching lesson, a good learning lesson, and you show them how you're going to work through that. Because again, I think that you all get better by doing that. The coach gets better, the box owner gets better, and then you're making an impact on other people who are surely going to experience that at some point in their career or their athletic pursuits, right? So you use it as an example to teach others and bring them on board, and then you're also going to build relationships and trust that way too.
Yeah, and I think, for a lot of us, we burn out, because of the members.
Yeah.
So,
showing them and teaching them, hey, here's some healthy ways I have learned. I have not done a great job with boundaries for a reason for the first 3 years we opened our doors, because I was so focused on growth and our goals. And yet now I'm at the position where it's important for me to start to integrate boundaries. And this is going to be hard for me because I haven't done this. So I'm going to be a work in progress. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this. And again, that may not look like I'm not answering emails after 5. I'm not going to be on social media. I don't respond to DMs. Like, I post all of my boundaries out there very clearly so people know what to expect from me, and then they're not surprised. And letting people know that, again, is just, it's admirable. And I think that that's an attractive quality in a leader, is showing people what you're working on.
Yeah, for Fern and I, with a lot of the people we work with, they're dealing with that burnout for those exact reasons. And then they're like, well, but I've been answering these emails at 4 a.m. of someone that's asking, can I come to class, for 5 years. I love that. Like, I've never really approached it. My answer is like, you don't have to respond, right? And they're
right.
like, but I like it even better with giving them the answer. I've not done a good job with this.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean I don't like you. And I tell people all the time, text me anytime you want, because I'm not going to get back to you if I don't want to.
Of course.
Sleeping, my phone's not near me, and if I'm busy, my phone's off, right? So my phone's here. There may be people texting me, but I'll get back to them when we're done. And for some reason, as business owners, which both you and I are, they feel like, well, I have to. Like, no, because you're the red dots and the pinging And the stress will never end because you don't know when someone's going to text you. But I love that idea of putting it out there and saying that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of box owners are afraid to do that. And then the other aspect of burnout, sometimes it's physical. And there's kind of this, stigma of, well, I'm the owner or I'm a coach. I need to go RX and I need to go 100%. And as I've gotten older, like I'm like, hey, here's how I did the workout. I scaled it to 95 because I wanted to hit this stimulus, which I want you guys to do. And by the way, if I'm scaling, I'm way fitter than you. You should be scaling. So I think maybe that idea of like, and you also know this, if you were going to do Fran, there's like, oh no, I don't want to do it. It's stressful. But if I said, hey, you're going to do Fran and your goal is to go 6 minutes instead of 3,
Yep.
you'd be like, okay, is a sigh of relief. And you're probably going to be closer to 3 than 6. You just had to start. So I think there's that idea when you're burned out and you don't want to work out of just scaling the workout or doing something fun, like you said. Like, you don't always have to chase your weakness. Sometimes it's okay to do burpees if you love burpees, or heavy deadlifts if you want to do that, because something is better than nothing.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a great way that you lead by example, is by saying, here's where I am on my journey. Here's why I'm scaling. And again, they at the end of the day get to do with that information what they want, whether they say, oh, that's a good idea, or they end up learning the hard way, right? But like you have and like I have, sometimes we have to experience things and learn the hard way in order to really grow and evolve in that way. But you continue to lead by example by showing people what you're doing and giving them the reason why you're doing that. And I think that's critical, is at the beginning of a class, being able to ask the individuals, hey, as you're warming up today, think about your why. What's your intention? If your goal today is to have fun because you've been stressed as shit and your life outside of this is not fun at all, then I want to see fun all over everything you're doing today, stopping mid-set to laugh and to dance and to high-five people and whatever you have to do to honor that. If you're in here and you're saying your purpose is to move better, have better quality, better range of motion, then we're going to do everything we can to make sure you're meeting that goal. If you're in here to push your limits and really see what's possible when it comes to these sets of pull-ups, then we're going to push you outside of your comfort zone a little bit, and we're going to try to have you do bigger unbroken sets from the beginning of this workout. So, you collectively as a group, you incorporate that in your classes, and you try to help people understand that there's different purposes and there's different whys and intentions that they can have at the beginning of this class. And whatever that is for them, you are, as a coach, going to try to help them honor that, stick to that.
And, that's something we discuss often, the whiteboard brief. And I think too often coaches are like, warm up, workout, go. But you should have those conversations. And maybe it's not every class every day, but I would argue it should be, because that was 30 seconds.
Yep, absolutely.
And you're basically offering scale to RX mindset during that.
100%.
We forget about that. Like, hey, you're here. It's okay if you want to go easy today. Maybe let me know so I don't yell at you.
Exactly right.
If you want to go, here's some challenges.
Exactly.
But before we wrap up, I would like to look at it from 2 perspectives. Can you give me maybe, again, I just always like to give something tangible for the listeners, but maybe 2 things someone can do in the morning to set their day off on the right path from a mindset perspective, and then also 2 or 3 things they can do when they show up at the gym, or they show up in their garage, or when they're on their way to the gym, to get their mind right for a workout.
Absolutely. A popular concept is to get a win in the morning, and I think that can be, again, it's a dopamine hit for us all to know that we did something positive in the morning and something proactive for ourselves. So starting the morning off in the first 5 minutes by doing something positive and proactive for yourself, to me, that looks like a glass of warm water with lemon and Himalayan sea salt and drinking that first thing. It's just the way that I'm saying, hey, I'm going to be proactive about my health and being intentional about doing something good for me today. So starting there is something really helpful to win your morning. Taking a minute to be grateful for whatever it is. Again, even if it's just that you woke up, you have breath in your lungs, you have your senses, you opened your eyes. So almost immediately when we open our eyes, we're going to get a cortisol release, and we're going to begin to start to, our heart rate's going to begin to increase, and we may begin to have those thoughts about our day and stressful and rushed. If we can just deep breath, quiet that down, and I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for this morning. I'm grateful for my bed. I'm grateful for the senses that I have, for the ability to see and feel. I think that's another really big thing is getting a win, doing something positive and proactive for yourself, and then also taking a moment to center yourself around anything that you can be grateful for, anything.
I love it. And that, I think for so many people, adding something becomes daunting. Like, oh, I got to get a journal in it. Like you could just think it. Like, I'm really
Just think
grateful
it.
for this glass of water, a cup of coffee,
Exactly right.
wife, husband, whatever's going on in your life.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep. And then before a workout, I think the most important thing is just that why is like, what is my intention today? I'm going to the gym. What do I need? Check in with yourself. What do I need? Am I feeling good? Have I been sleeping good and eating good? Is it an opportunity for me to push myself again? Or today is like, my stress is high, my sleep and my recovery are low. I just want to go in here and move because I know that will help me feel better. And checking in with yourself is the first and foremost most important. And then what are my again, like, process goals around that? How am I going to either have fun? How am I going to push myself? How am I going to make sure I focus on movement? So having a why and then having some kind of process focus around that why is, if that's something that you do before you walk in those doors every day, again, 99% of the time, you're going to walk out there like it was the best hour of the day because you met your intentions. You were clear about your purpose, and then you had clear ways you were going to back up that purpose, and you leave on the other side feeling good about the hour you spent. No one likes to waste time. No one likes to look back and feel like, that wasn't worth it, or that sucked, or that wasn't fun, or that was in any way a waste of time. And so the way that you keep that from happening is you set up on the front end of that before it even gets started.
Not just because this is your expertise, but also because you are a level 3. I think things have changed over the years, or not changed, but evolved, where back in the day it was like, you're here 100%.
Yep.
As far as effort, intensity, or distance.
Of course.
So based on your knowledge and your experience, if you were to lay out a week and say that, well, let me ask you, 7 days, we're talking normal people. We're not talking the games athletes, not even the people that are trying to top 10%. Like, I do this to be happy,
Yep.
to be healthy, etc. What would 7 days look like, including rest days, active rest days, 100% intensity days, and obviously 0% would be rest. But what would you lay out a perfect week to look like for someone like me?
I'm going to say that most people actually, quote unquote, need less intensity than they think that they need. And I know that, again, goes against a lot of CrossFit methodology and the principles of CrossFit training, especially that we learned from the beginning of the days that intensity is everything. But most people, I think, are already chronically stressed in their lives and already dealing with some metabolic dysfunction in their lives based on the pace that they're trying to keep and the amount that they're trying to do. So honestly, I believe most people could benefit from far less intensity than what a typical CrossFit environment provides, pending what the programming looks like. So, that's an asterisk, I guess, to the way that I would answer this question, that I think is important for people to understand that intensity isn't the only answer for results by any means. And although that is a component that can be important and is important for you to progress as an athlete in the sport, I don't think at all it's a component that's necessary for you to be at your peak. I shouldn't say peak, but healthy and fit at all. And so less intensity is actually what I would probably practice. I really like 4 days a week for most people, whether that looks like an every other day type of thing, or that looks like a 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, and then do some fun stuff on the weekends and get outside. I really like a prescription of 4 days a week, and maybe 2 or 3 of those weeks, yeah, you're doing something for time if it so allows that you move really well. And again, you've built up those skills and that ability to move through something for time. But the majority of that time spent working on conditioning, working on skill, working on strength. And that looks like 60 to 80% of the time is low to moderate intensity, and maybe 10% of the time your training overall is high intensity, all out effort.
I think in a bubble, yes, intensity gives results, but we have to remember, like you said, stress plays a role. Nutrition plays a role. Sleep plays a role. Mm-hmm. So too much intensity can actually cost you results if you're not doing the other things. And many of those other things, unfortunately, we don't have as much of a direct impact on, right? Your stress, your sleep to some extent. So what we
Yep.
can modulate is that intensity.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I think that a recipe for disaster is trying to go 5, 6 days a week and go high intensity each of those days. I think that most people, that's not the path to the greatest outcomes and the greatest results. I think, yes, if training is your lifestyle, meaning you're spending 4 to 6 hours in the gym because your job or your schedule allows for that in a way that you're trying to be the best competitor you can be, certainly, 20% of your day is going to be intensity, or maybe 40% of your day is going to be intensity. But for most people, again, that's not the prescription that I think is going to be the most impactful on their fitness or their health.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's, and we also have to remember back in the day, CrossFit was one workout,
Yep.
oftentimes, less than 8, 9 minutes.
Right.
Where nowadays we're trying to get this intensity, but multiple times, either a day or over a longer period of time.
Right.
I mean, look no further than someone like Matt Frazier, who literally, best ever, retired because everything else he was doing, that's what the mistake CrossFitters make. Well, I can do it because they do it.
Yep.
And then you realize this guy, every decision he's made for the last 5 years revolves around the gym.
Yep.
So while you're sipping on your, margaritas on a Saturday, realize that's why you shouldn't be having intensity.
Exactly. And I love that, that he's been coming out more with basically talking about how he was one of the first, if not the first person after the games who started to take an off season, how a majority of the guys and ladies at that time when he started were hitting training the next day. They were getting right back into the gym the next day. And he was like, at the beginning, he was caught up in that. And he says that, he learned that was not the approach that was going to bring him the most results, and he started building in an off season 2, 3, 4 months at a time. And again, I think that that's really important for a lot of athletes to hear, because they can understand that you can be your best. You can actually probably be better than what you're currently being right now by adding in those periodic breaks and rests and pulling back in your intensity.
Yeah, I think he said he took a month off after
more. Yeah.
So that's, if Matt Frazier can take a month off and win the CrossFit Games,
you can take a Tuesday or Wednesday off, right?
Even one day a week,
right?
The equivalent of what he takes off every year. And he also said he takes a full rest day every week where he literally tries to do nothing. So
yep, as little as possible.
You at 40, 50 years old, listening, need a rest day.
Yeah, most likely.
Dawn, where can people learn more about you, your business, and how to improve their mindset?
So drivenmindtraining.com, and on social media, Driven Mind Training. I also just released mindset training on the SugarWOD app. So it comes out 3 times a week, and there's an athlete check-in on Saturdays. So that's been really cool. I'm building a team of individuals that have all sorts of different goals within sport, within any type of fitness goal or CrossFit goal. And it's a really interactive way for me to be able to work with more athletes, because my one-on-one coaching schedule has been full for years. So I created this mindset training program so that anybody who wants to access mental performance training can do so at a way smaller cost.
Yeah, and I think, no different than what we tell people with affiliates. Like, if you own an affiliate and you don't have a coach, you're doing it wrong. And I think, and we've said, every aspect of life, like, people will drop hundreds of dollars for programming where it's free out there. People will drop hundreds of dollars for nutrition coaching when it's, that's free, but it's a small aspect. And then they're like, hey, let's completely ignore what I would consider the most important. Think about it from any philosophy and all that stuff. It's like, you always hear that, like, you can control everything. I'm sorry, you can't control anything but your mind.
Absolutely.
You have no influence over the programming that goes on at the box, over how this person treats you, over this or that, but you can control your mindset. And I can't imagine you improve your mindset around training and you're not improving your mindset around your everyday life.
Absolutely. Yep. I couldn't feel more strongly that it's the most critical piece of you being able to not only be successful and reach your goals, but you, like you said, developing into a more well-rounded and complete person, not only athletically, but outside of the gym as well.
Well, I love it. Plus, you gave us that great idea of a rating system. So
Yeah, let's see that in action.
we will. I'm gonna, Anasan's working on it as we speak, I'm sure. So
Best hour of my day, worst hour of my day, somewhere in between, right?
that's it. Best, worst. That's really all it takes. So
It is.
I love it. I'm always excited after talking to someone. That's where the connection piece came in earlier. So I appreciate everything. I love seeing what you're doing. And, if you guys are interested in learning more, check out Dawn. Great stuff.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.